Hello, and in this video I'm building a Dutch style roundabout. So obviously with it being a Dutch style roundabout there is a big emphasis on bike transport and pedestrian accessibility. So roundabouts usually are not great for either pedestrians or bikes because there's this big open circle where people can't walk through. There are normally cars going. They don't go too fast, but they don't have to stop in a roundabout like a normal traffic light junction. So this one is obviously inspired by roundabouts that they make in the Netherlands, and it has priority on the entrances and exits of the roundabout for bikes. So as you can see here, I'm placing a new bike path that came out, and it's a much smaller bike path. The only problem is the colour. I don't really like the colour for it, but I fixed that with a lot of work, but I fixed that. And the bike path goes around the outside, and also the pedestrian walkway goes around the outside of that. So as you can see, I'm placing the bike paths. They follow the road and then curve out to eventually meet the circle that goes around. Now, most of the time, the circle will be one way, so bikes can only go one way around it, like the roundabout itself. But these bike paths are two ways, so it's the bikes go both ways around it, but it's not too big of a deal because bikes don't really cause traffic. The way that the bike's AI works and just bikes work in general is it's a bit strange. They don't really behave at all. They just clip through everything, and they don't really care about other bikes. And now that is very similar to cars, where they clip through everything, but cars tend to not clip through one another if they're on the same road. Bikes will do that, and it's a bit annoying. I try and fix it with just how the bike path is, but you don't really notice it because there's not very many bikes in this in the build time lapse. So here I am making a small speed bump, I guess, for the entrances and exits of the roundabout. I'm using Sparks's speed bumps. Now these are good because they allow you to put decals over them, so I use them here so I can add the decals for when cars have to stop for pedestrian or bike traffic. I also go about adding pedestrian walkways around the edges of the roundabout because obviously I'm not going to have the people cross so close to the centre of the roundabout, because then there'll be no place for the cars to stop when they have to wait for the bikes or people. Now they don't really do that with the traffic AI. They sort of stop if they'll see not if they see. If the computer has calculated that there is a bike going to be crossing at that time, the cars will stop, but most of the time they will either just drive through and the bikes will just semi-avoid them, but most of the time just plough straight through the car and it won't really matter. It does suck a bit for the how it looks, but it's not too bad. So for the centre of the roundabout, I used a pedestrian road which had a quite nice just texture, which is like a cobblestone texture, which in real life would be used as a truck run over. So if a big truck comes over with a trailer, it can run over the inside of the roundabout without it mattering too much. And then in the centre of that, I used another one of Sparks' roundabouts. Used procedural objects to scale it to the right size and then lowered it into the ground, so only the top part was showing, and the inside where there is dirt is left free, and I eventually put some plants in that. So for the bike path edging, I use just some standard curbs, go around filling those in because I plan to add these. So I use Ronix's ploppable pavements to fill in the gaps between the roundabout and the bike path. Now I go even further later on and remove some of the inside of the roundabout because it's not necessary to have. I'll go in more to detail of that when it happens. As you can see here, I'm filling in the spaces here between the road and the bike path, giving it a slight hump to it, giving more protection to the bikes, and placing curbs right up to the edge of the road. In real life, the bike path will probably be sunken, like to match the road, but it's really hard to do that. I tried to do that, and these bike paths that I used don't like being sunken and don't like being moved around too much, so I just left it as it was and put them on top of the road. So here I am adding some road markings to the crossing. So the triangles are basically to give way, and obviously the black and white crossing is for pedestrians to cross. But also in the Netherlands they have these squares. Not really sure what they mean, but they tend to be on bike crossings, so it must be something to do with bikes. So I basically just made a small square out of lines and placed them on the bike crossing here. Now obviously if you did this in a real city, this would be a lot of decals just in one area, not really serving a function. There might be a square decal. I thought I had one and was looking around and just couldn't really find one that I had. I thought I did, but maybe I just uninstalled it and forgot to reinstall it by accident. I also go about extending the median here for the road using some they are called vanilla medians, but they are on the workshop, made by somebody. I'm not 100% sure. They came out a couple of weeks ago and I just can't remember the name of the person. So I extend the median up into the roundabout more, because it's not, you don't need to have this massive amount of space. So I do that on all four corners of the roundabout. Obviously I used procedural objects. I turned the prop into a procedural object, scaled it to the right size, and they fit very nicely in that area. I also go about adding the markings for the actual roundabout itself, the same triangle give way symbols, and on the other side it's just a standard line so you can see the continuation of the roundabout. So here I've skipped ahead to where I have extended the pavement out into the roundabout. It just gives more protection to the bike path and the pedestrians. Also I find it just looks different to normal, because the roundabout is normally a perfect circle. This one has the corners taken out of it and it looks quite nice. And obviously with the centre part that trucks can drive over, it's perfectly fine for trucks to be able to navigate this roundabout. I would hope. Like, this isn't real life, but in game the trucks never even touch it, because just how trucks work in the game, they just tend to follow exactly where the cab has driven. So for the bike path itself, I use Sparks's prop decals, and I use procedural objects to basically just resize them to fit the bike path, give a more interesting texture than the actual bike path texture has. This was a pain and would be pretty much impossible to do for an entire city, just for how long it took. You may have seen in some of the cinematics